Should Pascal Siakam be an all-star this season? Well, so far the stats say absolutely, plus the two-way players are stepping up. Why? And how can they keep doing it? And why tonight's game against the Magic is way more important for the Pacers than you realize on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Wednesday and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, much to discuss. Players who were thought to be huge, massive stars for the Pacers this year. We're going to dive into Pascal Siakam's season so far, statistically and anecdotally, to dive into, should he be an all-star? What could he be? And why I think, yes, right now he absolutely should be. Then we'll go to the other end. Guys who weren't expected to play much, but have been effective. Enrique Freeman, Quenton Jackson, two-way guys, what they have done so well to help the Pacers out in the stretch where they're so hurt, and what they can do to keep helping while the Pacers are banged up for the rest of this month if they continue to be in this situation. And why tonight's game against the Magic is actually more important for the Pacers than you realize. I'm still buzzing from watching Steph Curry just go crazy in Warriors Mavs. And we're just going to hop right in. Pascal Siakam, I hinted at this yesterday in the podcast with Dave Searle. You should go listen to that one if you haven't. We talked about a ton of fun stuff. Siakam has been balling this year. If you've watched the Pacers, you know it. Even on nights where he's not as impactful, he has, like, you look at the end of the game and you're like, oh, he had 15, 6, and 8. Like, that's a great game, right? And he's defending better. So right this second, I would like to first thank Pascal Siakam for the nice round numbers for his stats. 10 games in, Pascal Siakam has exactly 200 points, exactly 65 rebounds, and exactly 45 assists, which means he is averaging exactly 20 points per game, 4.5 assists per game, and 6.5 rebounds per game. Easy round numbers to talk about. So I mentioned this yesterday. I will now say it again. There are 12 players in the NBA currently achieving those numbers. That would be Jokic, Sabonis, Tatum, Giannis, LeBron, Julius Randle, Siakam, Luka, Paolo before he got hurt, James Harden, Cade Cunningham, Zion Williamson. Pretty dang good group of players to be associated with for Pascal Siakam, the 26.5, 4.5 club. That seems like a group of all-star players is what I thought reading it. And I thought, okay, let's see if this random threshold that Siakam's beating right now is it indicative of all-star appearances. So last year, 2023-24, 10 players finished the season in this club of stats. 9 of them were all-stars. The exception, Alperen Şengün, who was close, right? Was frequently discussed as a potential all-star last year, but did not make it. 2 years ago, 2022-23, 9 guys were in the club of 20 points, 6.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists per game. 8 of them were all-stars, and the exception that year was Karl Towns, who got hurt on Thanksgiving and only played 29 games, and thus probably would have been an all-star had he played enough. So that threshold matters a lot. And oh, by the way, in 2022-23, Pascal Siakam met that threshold with the Raptors and was an all-star for the second time of his career. So those seem like arbitrary cutoffs just because they are his stats this year, but that has tended to be, especially for forwards, a club of guys that makes it. That is including his own most recent all-star appearance. If he can hold those numbers, he's got a good shot. And that is just numerically. If you've watched Siakam play, he's just been so steady and reliable on both ends, right? He hits a crucial shot, it seems like, every game, or has a big game when the Pacers are struggling, or fills an important role on big nights. He was by far their best player in their most important win over Boston of the season. He's just playing excellent basketball for the Pacers all season long. And the other part of this that doesn't matter for the stats is he's playing much better defense this year than last year, right? That I won't even bring out a stat for. If you've watched the Pacers, if you've watched him get caught in isolation, if you've watched him rotate, if you've watched him just play defense at all, and you watched the team last year, you just know, like, he's defending much better this year than he was last year, which has to matter in this equation, right? Not only is he hitting thresholds that have statistically been important for all-star appearances, he's defending quite well. So really good Siakam season on those fronts. The question that would then come next is, okay, it's been 10 games. Can he keep doing this, right? Can this be Siakam's continued success for the rest of the season at every stat? The passing, to me, 4.5 assists per game. Yeah, oh yeah, he can sustain that easily, right? We've seen Siakam be that level of passer all the time in his career. In fact, With the Pacers last year, Siakam averaged 3.7 assists per game, but that was in 41 games. With Toronto, he was well over 4.5 every year since 2019-20, right? He's hit that level of distributing responsibilities before when he sees doubles coming, when he knows he needs to get it out, or when he's asked to distribute more because they're doing an inverted pick and roll with Haliburton as a screener, which is less frequent as the season's gone on, but it's still something they turn to, or whatever he can get to. He can pass. We've seen it, especially in tight angles in the post because of his height and size and vision. He's got that down. So, yeah, I absolutely think he can hold 4.5 assists per game. The last time he was under that pre-Pacers, again, was 2019-20. Rebounding, 6.5. Oh, yeah. I think this number is going to go up. That's actually his worst figure since 2018-19, when he won Most Improved with 6.9 rebounds per game, well over 7 every year since. With the Raptors last year, he was at 6.3 rebounds per game, but then came to the Pacers and averaged 7.8 per game, getting his average over 7 for the season. Oh, yeah, I absolutely think Siakam will probably up that number, especially because his offensive rebounds are a little up right now, but his defensive rebounds down to 4.7 per game. That could actually be a factor in the team improving on the defensive glass as well anyway. Would just be him being better on that end of the floor. Per minute, his rebounding is down on the defensive end. This would be his tied for worst season in defensive rebounds per 36, right? So, yeah, I think he can sustain 6.5 rebounds. So the first two of the stats, I think, would be the two that I think he's most likely to hold of this arbitrary club of his current stats of 26.5, 4.5. Now, the points. Let's talk about the points. 20 points per game. That sounds like a very attainable number for a guy who's averaged 20 points a game every year since 2018-19, right? Like, yeah, I think Pascal Siakam can score 20 points a game easily. He's that good. He's clearly that talented. He averaged 21.3 points per game for the Pacers last year. 20 seems very attainable. And yet, while he is averaging 20 right now, he's currently taking fewer shots per game than he has since his third year in the NBA, right? With on a team with Haliburton, on a team with Mathurin cooking, and Myles Turner, who warrants shots, and McConnell when he's in there, who's going to shoot, and Nembhard when he's playing, who's going to shoot. It's not that like Siakam's shot attempts are wrong. He's taking 14.7 a game last year at the Pacers. It was 15.8. That isn't like so crazy of a difference, but it is a change. It is a little bit of a drop, right? His usage rate is 22.4%. That is also his lowest usage rate since his third season in the NBA, 2018-19. So if one of the numbers is going to not hold from its current state, I actually think it will be points, not because he's worse at scoring. He's more efficient right now than he ever has been, but because the volume is down. Now, it also is fair to question the efficiency numbers. 44.7% from three, well beyond what he's ever done before. That's 11% above his career average. He shot well from three for the Pacers last year. He was at 35% with the Raptors the year before. He's had seasons in the 36, 37 range, right? Like, I think he can settle into league average from three, but he's been scorching hot so far to start the season, right? I don't know that he'll settle into that elite of a number from three, which is kind of supporting his absurd true shooting percentage of 63% right now. But last year he was over 60% without shooting that well until he came to Indiana. And it's fair to say, well, yeah, maybe his three stops falling, but his free throw goes in more. He's 6% below his free throw percentage so far this year. So he's making his twos a little better than he did last year. And he's certainly improved in a lot of ways, but he's hitting like 80% at the rim and drilling everything in the paint. Like, I think his jumpers will fall a little less. His free throws will fall a little more, and it'll come down to volume. If his volume ticks up a little more, especially with all these injuries, then he could get to 20. But the scoring, I think, will be the hardest stat to hold for Siakam. But I think his defense will hold. I think his rebounding is going to go up. I think his assists are probably pretty close to where they'll settle in. So if he is at or above this 26.5, 4.5 club and is defending at this level, he's currently at a career high true shooting. We'll see if that holds. I mean, if all this is true, oh yeah, Pascal Siakam has a great chance to be an all-star this year. Will Furr and I discussed this before the season, and it was fascinating because he said this: I think I can be better for the Pacers with a training camp. And you never know what that means, right? Haliburton came midseason and had a training camp. He was so young, right? You just expected that he'd be better because of his age. But a lot of guys, this happens, and I can't really explain it. Like Aaron Gordon in Denver had it. Sometimes just having that time and a new focus on what your team does and a new connection with your teammates from the whole offseason just helps ever so slightly in so many ways and stacks up to a big change. We're seeing that with Siakam. He looks great. He has certainly been among the best 15 to 20 players in the NBA this year to me. And in the Eastern Conference specifically, where a 500 record gets you a top 4 seed, I think he's on his way right now to potentially being in the All-Star mix. Great season from Siakam. If he holds these numbers, I think he's got a very, very good chance of making an All-Star game. He's just doing it all for the Pacers on both ends. It's been very impressive. And on nights where, there's been a lot of nights where he has a great game and isn't the biggest story because something else happens. They get thumped by the Hornets. Mathurin goes crazy. Haliburton either is awesome or not up to the level he needs to be. Injuries take over, right? There's been a lot of other storylines that are bigger getting in the way of talking about him, which is why I keep calling Siakam the metronome. He just keeps beating at the same pace, playing the way he does, doing very well, beating to his own drum. And then it's like almost an afterthought, which is not fair because he's playing excellent basketball and deserves this kind of discussion. All-Star could be coming his way if he keeps playing at this level, which would be the third one of his career. And I wonder how many guys in NBA history have had 3 All-Star appearances, all with gaps in between them at a level like his. Very strange timing of them, but he's just been kind of on the fringes for forever, but he's been that good so far this season. Let's go to the other end of the Pacers roster, from a max player to the two-way players, Quenton Jackson and Enrique Freeman. We talked to both of them at practice on Tuesday. Something that stands out about what they're doing well is what they're doing when they don't have the ball. How have they helped the Pacers? Can they keep doing it? So much more to discuss on today's Locked On Pacers. Before we get to that, though, we need to talk about the great people over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action and the NBA action on FanDuel. They are America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets on FanDuel if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get that hunch in the middle of a game, it happens to everybody at some point, you can go to the FanDuel app and check out the latest stats of the action. You can view live play-by-play, see what's going on at what time, and so much more on the exact same page where you place your bets. So you can be as informed as possible. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen, Locked On NBA, to hear me go crazy about Steph Curry and Joel Embiid is back and playing, even though the Sixers lost. And holy cow, Dyson Daniels did what? And the Hawks beat the who? What? The NBA was crazy last night. I am not unique. I am disagreeing with lots of people about the NBA Cup. I absolutely love the NBA Cup. I love the scenarios, the tiebreakers. The courts are better this year. Great first night of the Cup. Pacers debut it on Friday. We'll talk about it when the time comes. Let's keep talking Pacers with some two-way players. Very important what they've been doing. I used to say, the first time I remember bringing this up and making this a point was, if you have a two-way player on your team and they help you get one win in a season, they have fulfilled more than can be expected of their duty on a two-way contract. You don't want to ever need to rely on them. So some of you might remember this deep cut. Brian Bowen II was on a two-way with the Pacers, and there was a night where TJ Warren was hurt and McDermott was hurt, and something else happened where Brian Bowen had to start in Chicago for the Pacers against the Bulls. It was the last day that he could play a game, or the last game he had left on his two-way deal that year in terms of available game time. And he started and he played good enough and they won. And that's what you want. Amita Brima starting when Myles Turner and Sabonis are hurt. Alex Poitras filling in December. In 2017-18, Edmund Sumner. Right, two-way guys who fill in the rotation and help you win once or twice. That's a successful year. Last year's Pacers. You listening? How many? Can you even name more than 3 times last year a Pacers player on a two-way contract was in the rotation at all? I remember Kendall Brown in Utah, the game right before or after either one, the Siakam trade when the Pacers just got thumped and Nembhard was guarding Lauri Markkanen. I think Kendall Brown was in the rotation that night. Oscar Tshiebwe was in the rotation, I remember, for a game in Minnesota, and they were trying to match his minutes up with backup bigs. Right, that happened, but they very rarely needed these guys last year. They already have needed their two-ways more this year. It's the 10th game. That's how banged up the Pacers are. But Quenton Jackson and Enrique Freeman have already kind of stepped up and contributed to some winning. And the standout thing to me about what's made them helpful is a lot of times two-way players can be one-trick ponies or be really reliant on they were an elite scorer before. Let's try to gamble on developing their other stuff. They've been helpful without scoring much. And I think that is is pretty unique. And now, granted, Quenton Jackson can score. Like, scoring is something nice for him. He didn't miss a shot when they beat the Knicks. His top speed is really important, though. His ability to drive and like get a defense in rotation is really important. These guys doing stuff without the ball has really mattered, right? So starting with Jackson, we just saw them play the Knicks, and they put him on Jalen Brunson. And they were like, yeah, that's fine. He worked his tail off, and he did not get embarrassed in that matchup at all. 2 days before that, they played Charlotte. They got embarrassed in that game, but Quenton Jackson did a totally fine job guarding LaMelo Ball. LaMelo Ball did not have a good night. He actually defended Trey Mann better than a lot of other Pacers players did, right? They've relied on him for like tough matchups, and he's done okay. He's done okay filling in off the ball, playing next to another guard. I watched the Mad Ants with Quenton Jackson last year. If he was in the game, he was bringing it up a lot, right? And he did great. He averaged like 23 for them, 22. He should have had the ball all the time, but I've never really seen what it looks like for him. You guys watch Summer League. A lot of you did with him. That I've never seen him in that role where he toggles between handling and showing off his speed at times. And, TJ McConnell's out here or whoever else is out here. And he's done a much better job of that than I anticipated, mostly because I've never seen it before. But he's hitting 50% of his shots, almost 2 assists a game. That's great. That's what the Pacers need from him. Of course, the scoring part with the ball is important, but the fact that he's able to do stuff without the ball, as this really speedy, like guard-sized, but also kind of taller, but also kind of thin, unique-sized guy, he's been really important. And I think that's been helpful when they have not had Nembhard and McConnell, like in Charlotte. But now, without some guards, they need him to step up and play. And he's done a really good job filling in at, without Nesmith, without Nembhard. They need someone to fill in on the wing as well, move up Shepherd a position. Quenton Jackson, get in there. He's doing stuff on both ends, with and without the ball. That's been important. Enrique Freeman, too. I think that everybody knew the blueprint for him from Summer League, similar to Jackson, right? This guy's going to hustle. He's going to hit the glass. That's all stuff that's obviously immediately translated, right? If you provide energy, you don't have to touch the ball to help. In fact, other guys usually feed off of that kind of player because they come in and they're sprinting and diving and all that kind of stuff. I wish Enrique Freeman had a little better screens. I think that would help him a lot because then he'd be like the ultimate hustle guy who just like makes stuff happen, even though he's been pretty good. The fact that he mixed up in Summer League the same way he mixes it up now says a lot about the way he's playing. In 4 games, they've relied on him, and he's been solid in all of them. Back up in the rotation already 3 times for Enrique Freeman. As a 6'7" center, he's done a pretty good job hustling and dominating the glass. And I think the thing that stood out to me about him that I asked him about at practice today was like a lot of rookies are, you're choking up a lot when you get in the NBA, obviously. And in their first couple games, even guys like Enrique Freeman who have all this energy, they can make hustle plays that look important, but they have to think a lot, right? It's all new. It's faster. It's more spaced out. You're turning a lot. All of a sudden you realize you're not where you're supposed to be, or your man's not where you thought he was, and you like jump. You can tell they're thinking or like realizing all this stuff they're supposed to do. It doesn't really feel like that with Enrique Freeman. You can tell he's out of position sometimes, but just the way he blends, like growing from game to game and being himself, which is this high energy value vet kind of guy, which is not what he is. Obviously, he's 24. Is really impressive, and not thinking and being that kind of guy is important. So it's reached a point with him where I don't even care that he's a big man shooting 33%. Like that's not what he's out there to do. Putting the ball in the basket is important, but it's not something for him or Jackson that I think really matters. It's the other stuff. If Jackson comes out there and fills in well as an off-ball guard and defends a good player on the other team and checks out of the game 0 for 2, that's fine. Same with Enrique Freeman, who is getting his rebounds and was passing well enough against the Knicks and like gets a steal or a block basically every time he's out there. Like that's all really important. That's all valuable stuff. So that's what stood out to me about these two-way guys is them doing the small stuff all the time, moving the ball, not being in the way, not over-processing things. They just want to win, and they're stressing that, and they're playing like people who aren't just saying that to say that, right? I think that's been really impressive. Like this is the first real minutes for either of them. Obviously for Freeman because he's a rookie. Jackson played big minutes with the Wizards and played for the Pacers a few times last year, but that was all the garbage time. Those Wizards games were not real. Like they were out of it. They weren't playing for anything a lot of those times. yes, playing major minutes against good players is valuable experience. These games have like consequence and are rivalry games, or they're against good teams. And both of them are doing a fine job. And they might never be a central focus of the rotation or of what the Pacers are doing ever again. Like if Obi Toppin returns in Orlando, we might not hear from Enrique Freeman for a bit, right? But they've both filled in adequately and already contributed in a win. In Enrique Freeman's case, 2 wins if you count Detroit. That's really valuable to get from two-way guys already. Sorry to Tristan Newton, no chatter about you today, although he has played pretty well for the Mad Ants in their 2 games so far. I might do a Mad Ants segment this week, depending on how the timing works out with these Heat games and this Magic game. But either way, I think two-way guys stepping up in a major way and finding ways to contribute without needing the ball or needing to, do the skill that got them to the NBA has been really important for the Pacers and might be important again tonight when they face off the mighty Orlando Magic for a game that, yes, it is November 13th, is an important game for the playoffs. I mean it, and I'm going to explain why as we close out today's Locked On Pacers. Before we talk some Pacers Magic, we need to talk about Mint Mobile, because with big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets with Mint Mobile. You'll never have to worry about those gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month on a 3-month plan, they mean it. So say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month, and they all come with high-speed data, unlimited talk and text on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your phone with any Mint Mobile plan. Bring your own phone number and your existing contacts, and you can ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal. Get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. $45 upfront payment required. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen, many options. Locked On Magic to hear about their side of things heading into this game. This is a back-to-back for the Magic. They played NBA Cup action Tuesday night in their house. They have won 3 in a row. I don't think they've lost since the Pacers beat them in Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Locked On Blazers because they looked awesome in a win over the Wolves. Locked On Sixers to hear about Embiid's return. Locked On Hawks, I already said, because Dyson Daniels went crazy as they beat the Celtics. So many good games in the NBA last night for people to tune into. The NBA Cup, I love it. It's back. I love when the score matters, right? The Wolves fighting to the end, even though they're down a bunch, because the score and the point differential matters. Okay, Orlando Magic versus Indiana Pacers. It's November 13th. This is the 11th game for the Pacers. I believe the 12th of the Magic. This game is very important because of tiebreakers. Do you remember last year? We talked about this every week. I did tiebreaker and standing updates every week for the Pacers. By the end of the year, it was more frequent than that, right? Tiebreakers matter so much for seeding, for how things shake out. And they particularly matter with the Orlando Magic because they are in this Southeast Division, which is not a very good division in terms of the quality of total teams. So, this is the Pacers and Magic play 4 times this year. A win for the Pacers in this one would guarantee that they would, at worst, finish 2-2. The Southeast Division right now, Magic are 6-6. Every other team is under 500. Hawks, Heat, Hornets, and Wizards. Hornets and Wizards certainly project to finish there. We'll see what happens with the Hawks and Heat. Like the Magic won the division last year, and that mattered a great deal in any tiebreaker with the Pacers in a 2-way tie. In the 3-way tie that the Pacers had with Philly and Orlando, it did matter, right? Orlando won that. That's why they got the 5 seed. So having a chance to make it so the Pacers are up 2-1 and can go up 3-1 to just straight up win the head-to-head is a very big deal. And Banchero not playing adds to that, right? It's a big, big game for the Pacers. Like last year, that ended up being a major problem for them in the seedings race. They would have had a chance to be up a higher seed without it. Now, their seed ended up perfect for them, of course, but things changed dramatically. So for tiebreaker purposes, this game actually matters a lot already. It's also why Sunday's game mattered a little bit with New York because those teams only play 3 times. So the Pacers can still win that tiebreaker. Now, in terms of specific things to watch out for in this game with Orlando, who guards Franz Wagner was already a question for them, and then Andrew Nembhard did it last time they played. They don't even have that anymore. So if the starting lineup is once again Haliburton, Shepherd, Mathurin, Siakam, Turner, I mean, Franz just was awesome tonight for their Magic and their win over the Hornets. I think I'd try Siakam this time, get some size on him, see if that actually helps for the Pacers in any way. If not, I think the answer should probably be Ben Shepherd and just see what he can do. It's tough. They have to give up something. Magic are big if they start De Silva and Goga or whoever, with that team the way they are, and Haliburton's going to be on one of Suggs or KCP. They probably could use Shepherd on Suggs to get some point of attack defense on the point guard. It's just hard to figure out who should guard Franz Wagner. He's handles it a lot on the perimeter, but is tall. It's probably one of Siakam or Shepherd. Maybe it's Mathurin. There's a lot of good options, but I think that's a big storyline, and we'll reveal a lot about how the Pacers kind of want to view the hierarchy of what they're going to do without their 2 primary defensive options in the starting 5. They had one of them when they played Orlando in Gamebridge a few weeks ago. Can the Pacers keep their offense going for 48 minutes, right? They finally had some games in the last week or so where they do that. The Magic game they did. Most of the Celtics game they did. They just had a pretty good offensive night against the Knicks. They also had their worst offensive game in 5 years against the Charlotte Hornets, right? And they played the Magic last week and won, and that was very important. They needed it. But they also did not get 48 minutes of good offense, right? They started off so hot and looked so impressive in the first couple of minutes of that game that people kind of forget that the second quarter really tipped the scales and the Magic took the lead, and this zone defense was really, really making the Pacers' life hard, and Orlando was ahead in the fourth quarter too, even though all their leads were 1 point. The Pacers offense, I don't know where defense came from. That's not offense or defense. Pacers offense fell off a cliff. They had 49 points across the second and third quarters combined. They had over 30 in the other 2, which was huge, and they won the game because their first quarter was incredible with 38. But they can't have long stretches like that where a zone defense breaks them up so much, or they just can't get something going. They've got to get to the rim. They've got to make the Magics very good, even without Paolo defense, really rotate and be stressed in a way that makes it harder for them to play offense at an effective level. And transition is going to be important. After every stop they get, right, Turner and Mathurin combining for 21 rebounds that last game was extremely important, right? Easy buckets really matter. They ended that game even in fast break points. And the Magic, that's the only way they can score right now is fast break points, get some stops and run. So I think that's going to be really important for the Pacers is 48 minutes consistent offense. Do not get bogged down by the zone. Some smarter than me suggested that they thought the Pacers actually played pretty well against that zone and just missed some stuff. That it could be true. If they tear that thing up, they'll have a good chance. They really need to have 48 minutes of consistent offense. And then I personally think that'll be about the guards. Right, if Mathurin and Haliburton get going, or even someone else, Quenton Jackson or McConnell, the Pacers' speed will give them at least a chance to win this game. And the other thing, the final thing I think, beyond an injury question I have that's going to be important is Jarace Walker went crazy the last time these 2 teams played. So did TJ McConnell, right? They obviously were exceptional together. The whole Pacers bench was really good. But Jarace Walker, best game of his career to this point with the 17-6 without missing a shot and no turnovers, team high +8. They needed that to win by 7, right? Can someone step up like that, right? McConnell was excellent in that game. Shepherd and Toppin were both efficient and defended well too. But can someone else do that? Are they going to need someone else to do that? Because no one really had an off night except for Myles Turner and Andrew Nembhard. I guess that's 2 guys. There were infrequent off nights. The game the Pacers just won against Orlando. Does someone need to kind of fill a void of oh, wow, this bench player changed the game? Or can the Pacers starters actually carry them in a way that they didn't last time? But Jarace was huge, and he hasn't been as good since. They might need him to do something like that again. Last thing to keep an eye on, the Pacers practice Tuesday. We got to see him in their practice gym. Obi Toppin, I saw getting up threes and moving kind of well. At the end, he was able to do a little bit more in practice. Rick Carlisle said it's possible that he plays. He was questionable. It is listed questionable for Pacers Magic. My gut would be that he plays, but I don't know. I obviously don't know. That's why he's questionable. I have no knowledge of if he's going to play or not. That would be huge for the Pacers. Then they have 8 of 9 of a rotation, and they would just need to rely on one of their 2A guys. Now, again, both of them have been good, which is why I just did an entire segment on them, but getting one back would be very helpful. Then they're starting 5 plus McConnell, Toppin, and Walker would all be available, and they just need to fill in one other spot to really fill out the way they want. And maybe they would go 10 deep again, but that would help them quite a bit. And Obi Toppin's speed and shooting ability against Orlando specifically can be pretty important. But if Obi Toppin doesn't play, he's hurting, right? He played every single game last year. Pacers Magic tonight, tomorrow on this podcast. We'll talk all about it. What happened? Are the Pacers over 500, or did they miss another chance to do that for the second time of the season? What went right and wrong, etc. You know the deal by now. Can they have a comfortable wire-to-wire win? Still has yet to happen. And then Friday, we'll do a crossover Locked On Heat, both because it's NBA Cup time and because they play the Heat twice this weekend in the same building here in Indy. Looking forward to being at those and being a part of all that. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed these thoughts on the Orlando Magic, the 2A players, and Pascal Siakam. Back tomorrow talking Pacers Magic, all the good and bad that went down in Orlando. Till then, everybody have a wonderful day.